Welcome to Beyond the Bizarre, a podcast curated to all things, bizarre. My name is Brianna, and I will be sharing with you urban legends, lore, ghost stories, and more from around our planet. Hello everybody, my name is Brianna and I am the host of Beyond the Bizarre. I'm incredibly excited for our first episode tonight and I cannot wait to go and get into our topic with you all. So our first topic is the Paris Catacombs. And I found out a lot of weird things about it, a lot of interesting things I should say. And let's just say we're in for some very interesting information. But before we get into that, I want to preface by saying that each episode, we're typically going to get right into the topic, right into the information that I found during my research, and I'll share my opinions, my thoughts, my perceptions, what have you, with you all. But since tonight is our very first episode, I do want to tell you a little bit about myself, your host. So for starters, I'm from the United States. I'm East Coast. I'm 27. My love for podcasting just came from listening to different podcasts. Lack of time. Podcast makes it very easy for me to get a story or to get news or just whatever you can think of. Podcasts, are there when you don't have just the simple time just to do that. As for horror, my love for horror started when I was very young, around the age of 5. The first horror movie that I ever saw was the movie It, based on the Stephen King novel. I saw that when I was 5. My aunt showed it to me, and I remember being extremely terrified, but I feel that terror kind of sparked like a curiosity, and then which developed into fascination. And now here I am, so many years later, watched many horror movies, many anthology series, read many horror novels, horror blogs, different forms of horror media, and have just loved them all. So I figured I'll turn that love into creativity and create what we have tonight, which is Beyond the Bizarre. So with that being said, let's get into tonight's topic of the Paris Catacombs. So to start off tonight's episode, we're going to start with the history of the Paris Catacombs, how the catacombs came to be, and how they turned into what they are now, a place of supposed haunted ruin. So let's start with the history. During the 17th century, the cemeteries began to overflow. One specific neighborhood, Les Innocents, had the oldest and largest cemetery. People in this neighborhood began to complain that the cemetery exuded a strong smell of decomposing flesh, which makes sense since it is a cemetery. But even the perfume stores couldn't sell their perfumes and began to complain about the smell. They couldn't do business because it was stinking to high heaven. So I couldn't put myself in that place where I'm sitting on my cobblestone step or on my balcony or whatever and have the smell of rotting human flesh come across my nose, or trying to run a business and you're trying to sell some perfume and you're like, I know my perfume is not stinking like this. Like, what is going on? So as you can imagine, there were many various complaints on that. So moving ahead to 1763, King Louis XV wanted to ban all burial from occurring inside the capital. But of course the church opposed it and the burials continued, which means the smell continued to go throughout the city, stinking up everything essentially. So King Louis XVI continued the crusade and proclaimed that all cemeteries would be moved outside of Paris. So he had a little bit of success, where Louis XV didn't make it happen. Louis XVI got the job done. So However, it wasn't until 1780, which, unfortunately, 13 years later, he would be beheaded, followed shortly by his wife, Marie Antoinette. That would be a completely different episode. I was about to just completely go left. I'm not going to get into that. I will mentally make a mental note of that to make that another episode of the whole beheading thing. But it wasn't until 1780 that the city of Paris started to see a change in the burials. So during that year, due to a prolonged period of rain, the wall around the neighborhood of Les Innocents collapsed, which caused the rotting corpses to spill into the neighborhood properties. Now, oh my goodness. I would not know what to do if I was sitting there having a cup of tea and seeing some dead body rolling down my driveway. They didn't have driveways back then. I need to rewind. Rolling down the street, laying in my yard, looking at me with eyes missing. I would not know what to do. Whew. Okay. That threw me all the way left. So once the bodies started rolling in the streets, they decided to use old limestone quarries from the 13th century to store the bodies. So once that decision was made, the cemeteries began to be emptied, starting around 1786, and took about 12 years to completely move all the bones into the ossuaries within the catacombs. So let's see here. So they using old limestone quarries to move already rotten bodies. Aside from the fact that the place is stinking and dead bodies are being rolling down the streets on their own accord, I do have to take a moment to reflect that these people's internal resting spots are being disturbed, which is very sad. So that's probably the cause of a lot of disturbances that the catacombs is having today, or supposedly is having today. That could definitely be a part of that, I feel. Because, like, if you had your internal resting spot and your body's rolling down the streets and they just throw you any which way but the wind, you have every right to be disgruntled. So they stopped moving the bones into ossuaries in 1860. So as of that date and beyond that date, there are 6 to 7 million bodies buried in the catacombs. That is 6 to 7 million bodies that were relocated from the natural resting spot, all clumped together. Nobody knows who's who. Nobody knows whose bones is who. It's just all clumped together. The oldest bones date back 12,000 years to the Merovingian era. Some of the most famous bodies include the revolutionary Jean-Paul Marat, Maximilien de Robespierre, which is known for his reign of terror. This isn't a history lesson, so I'm not going to roll down that lane, but look it up. Maximilien Robespierre, reign of terror. Google. The catacombs extend for many miles under the city, which parts of it is still undiscovered. So what we have now, what we know of, there's parts that still haven't even been discovered or viewed, or even we know of the existence of, but it's just pretty much unknown. So I found that's pretty cool. And as of 1955, it is illegal to enter those unknown areas. Now, most people, including myself, are triggered by the unknown. So to make it illegal, I feel entices people to want to explore the unknown and to go down there and, dig around a little bit, find out things. It just kind of piques your curiosity, because people are usually drawn to things they don't understand or things that are forbidden. So to make it illegal, I think just pretty much causes people to be, ooh, let's go there, let's sneak down there, let's see what we can find, see what we can get into. And there's actually a term for people who actually illegally tour the catacombs. They're known as cataphiles, and they pretty much illegally explore the catacombs, the parts that are closed off to the public. Now, there are tours of the catacombs. Although they're illegal, they are tolerated by the locals there. So they kind of do have like unofficial tours, but they don't go into the illegal parts, just kind of like the forefront of it, just to kind of give you a general idea of what happens there. So now that we've covered a little bit of the history of the catacombs, now it's time to get into what I've personally been waiting on, the weird history. Now I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about why the catacombs interest me. Now, before I knew the existence of the catacombs, I was just like, this is an interesting story. But, that's fine. I learned about it a little bit in history. Never really thought much of it. But then I watched a movie some of you may be familiar with, some of you may not, called As Above, So Below. It came out in 2014. And that's pretty much the first time that I kind of saw the Paris Catacombs in a new light other than just world history. For those of you who have seen it, you guys know what I'm about to say. For those of you who have not seen it, I try my best not to give any spoilers away, so I'm just going to try to just brush over a little bit of a synopsis. But in the movie, a scholar, multi-PhD, goes exploring into the catacombs beneath Paris with her friend, her cameraman, and a few locals that agreed to take them down there. As I said, it goes back to where people actually do give local tours. When they get into the catacombs, they actually get more than what they bargained for when they are haunted by visions of their past, and even stumble across the entrance to the gates of hell at one point. And when I watched that movie, I remember thinking that the film did have really cool elements to kind of get me entrapped and to get me interested, to get me to think of as something outside of history, which history is my favorite overall subject. I love all things history, but to kind of bring horror into it, it really, really piqued my interest. But I did remember thinking the film had really cool elements that I liked, and I liked the combination of, once again, the history and supernatural of the film. So that was the first time that I saw it, and I was like, okay, this is cool, this is awesome. But when the film was released on demand, I actually ended up rewatching it, and I found myself asking questions like, how did the catacombs form? Where were they created? And of course, are the catacombs haunted? So those, kind of what piqued my interest and why this episode has the theme of the Paris Catacombs, why it's our first episode theme. So I kind of went down the rabbit hole and did some research on it at that time when I saw the movie again, just wanting to kind of inform myself and kind of wanted to see, okay, is this true? Are the gates of hell really down there? Do people really get lost? Do people really see things? And the first thing that popped up during my research was the lost tape. So for those of you who don't know what the lost tape is, in the early 1990s, a man, we don't know his name, traveled to the catacombs. It was never seen or heard from again. The only evidence that we have of his supposed disappearance is found footage of the man's final moments in the catacombs. The footage is about a minute and a half long, and it shows the man running and exploring the catacombs, picking up and examining remains. We then see the camera moving erratically as the man runs through the catacombs. Towards the end, the camera drops, and we see the man retreating away from the camera and his only source of light. This is the last time this man has ever been seen. Now, me looking at, because I went on YouTube and I watched it. At first, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, okay, I hope this is not gonna freak me out too bad. Don't want to have nightmares or anything, but it wasn't anything too scary for those of you who may want to check it out. It's just pretty much just a typical explorer video. We see him kind of calm, just looking at some skulls and bones and things like that in the catacombs, and then all of a sudden, homeboy's running. He's taking off running, and I'm like, what's going on? What did you see? We don't see anything, but he is obviously seeing something that has scared the crap out of him. So he's running, and the camera is just shaking erratically, and then the camera falls into dirt and water, and we just see him retreating away from his camera, his only source of light, pretty much the only sense of comfort and connection that he has with the outside world. So it prompts me to ask the question, what did he see that scared him so badly that would have him retreating away from his only sense of comfort? Now, this man being in the catacombs, having a camera, seems to be comfortable. I feel like, and I don't want to say, but I feel like it's safe to assume that he's used to being in situations where he's exploring, where he's looking into things different. He may have been a historian. I don't know. He may have just been down there just because. But for him to just leave his only sense of connection to the outside world, his only source of light at that, to run into complete darkness, he had to have seen something or felt something that just completely and utterly terrified him. And that's what makes it so unsettling. By itself, the video without any context, you'll be like, okay, this is just some guy touring and he freaked himself out, or, but knowing the history behind it and knowing pretty much, what I've discovered of the catacombs, it just kind of gives you an unsettling feeling. Just seeing that happen, like what would give him the urge to flee and to just run and not look back. So, fortunately, what he saw, we will most likely, I know I would never know because I'm not going down to the catacombs. So, it's a sad and unsettling and unfortunate thing, that happened. But, if he unfortunately is amongst the deceased in the catacombs, then hopefully he finds peace, I guess. I don't know. So with this man that disappeared, it kind of brought memories back from historians that remembered back in the early 1800s, another man had disappeared by the name of Philibert Spirit. Philibert Spirit was a doorkeeper at the Val de Grace Hospital. One day, he went down to the catacombs through an entrance, entrance to a staircase located near the courtyard of the hospital, so it wasn't that far. This was the last time he was seen alive. His body was found in 1804 after being missing for about 10 to 12 years. The weirdest thing about his disappearance and subsequent death is that his remains were found a mere few feet from an exit of the catacombs. He died just mere feet from salvation, mere feet from the world that he knew. He was so close, but somehow he just didn't make it. So that begs the question, why? Like, what happened? How can someone be so close and just give up and just die? Many people believe that Philibert Spirit's spirit still haunts the catacombs, acting as kind of a guardian angel for the catacombs and for those who are brave enough to tour it. He has kind of like a guardian angel protecting them for whatever darkness is down there, whatever malevolent spirits, entities, whatever it may be down there that's causing harm or that's making people terrified. They said he's there protecting them, and some people that have traveled there said they kind of feel a positive source sometimes when they're there. When they start to feel uneasy, they feel a sense of calmness, and a lot of people feel that that is Philibert Spirit. Something that I did forget to mention, going back to the disappearance of the man from 1990s. Some people do feel that it's a hoax. Now, I did keep that in mind when I did watch the video. Some people feel like it was a little bit too ghost huntery. People's like, it just didn't seem real. It just seems like he just was shaking the camera and then just ran. But I mean, that is very possible. It could be a hoax, but I don't always want to assume that it's just a hoax, because I feel like that comes from a place of people not wanting to acknowledge that there are things out here that just simply cannot be explained away. or simply, don't have an explanation. It's just otherworldly. And I'm trying to word it so I don't sound mean, but like I'm not a skeptic. I do believe. I've experienced things in my life. I've seen things. I've know people that have had encounters with otherworldly things are outside of this world, supernatural occurrences, that I fully believe that there are things out here that we just don't understand. But we are here to discuss them on this podcast, so, and the fact that you're here listening lets me know that you're into the same thing too, when you want to know more and want to learn more, and that's where I'm essentially here to do. So, following the disappearance of the man from the 1990s, there haven't been any really stories that I was able to find outside of the unknown man and Philibert Spirit, other than in 2017. This is just a few years ago that two teenage boys, aged 16 and 17, wandered into the catacombs and got lost. It took the local authorities 3 days to find the boys, and when they were found, they were in hypothermic state. So as far as we know, they didn't say that they saw anything or experienced anything. But imagine just being for 3 days in a complete darkness, no food, no water, no sense of anything. Just being trapped there for 3 days, knowing that you're surrounded by millions and millions of the dead. And you're just in complete darkness. Just take a moment to just picture yourself in their situation, being 16 and 17-year-old kids. That to me is utterly terrifying. I'm pretty sure with them being down there, they've probably read the stories about it being haunted and wanted to go down there and explore for themselves. You can imagine all the stories that were going through their head. Is this place haunted? They probably did feel something. And also in the darkness, your eyes can't play tricks on you. It's just a mental thing. Mind tricks. Your eyes can't play tricks on you. So that was probably happening to them too. Or it may not have been. They may have really been experiencing something. But unfortunately, without their commentary or anything, we're just left to assume or to ponder if they had seen anything or not. So with these findings on the Paris Catacombs, it was really, really interesting read. One day I do hope to one day possibly visit, be brave enough, hype myself up enough to possibly tour it. I'm not going to go into any unknown things. I will be with the tour group. I'm not going by myself, because as much as I love horror, I'm not going to the dark with 6 to 7 million dead bodies that are mad, probably because they were relocated in the first place. So I do hope to one day, go there, see it for myself, but if not, then I'm content being miles away, sitting here researching it on my computer and on my phone. So that information does conclude tonight's episode of Beyond the Bizarre. Once again, I'm glad that you guys have tuned in. You guys are here listening, ready to go down the rabbit hole further with me. Like I said, every week, as I said in our trailer, we have episodes every Tuesday. Every Tuesday, we will explore different urban legends, myths, lore, ghost stories, strange events. There's nothing that's safe from us, from me researching it, from us knowing, from us finding out about and just learning about and getting some additional information. Now, I did forget to mention this at the beginning. I do also have a website for our podcast. The website is www.beyondthebizarre.com. Just like the podcast name, beyondthebizarre.com. On our website, we will also on my website, I will also post additional information that I find interesting, but I may not necessarily mention on the podcast. So if I find like little nifty findings here and there, I'll share it on the podcast, or may not, and I'll put it on the blog for you all to go read about it or to view it there. You can also get podcast updates on the website as well. So if there's going to be any changes, or even to get the podcast theme, I will post a podcast theme for the next following week on our podcast website. So you'll be able to get that there as well. So with that being said, thank you once again for tuning in with me tonight, and I look forward to going down a rabbit hole some more with you guys in this world of Beyond the Bizarre.